The morning began like most others on Sycamore Lane, soft light, a breeze from the west, and the gentle hum of sparrows shaking off sleep. But something felt still. Too still. The wind came, but the old brass chime hanging from the porch didn't ring. Why not? Was it tangled? Or had something else changed? Across the quiet lawn sat a man in a wooden chair. Who was he? Why did he sit so still, like he'd been waiting for something for years? Not every hero has a monument. Some just need to be remembered once, quietly. If that means something to you, you're in the right place. Subscribe to American Quiet Courage. He wore a flannel shirt, faded and fraying at the cuffs. His hands, large but worn thin by time, rested atop a cane. He didn't move much, just watched the road like it had said goodbye a long time ago and hadn't come back since. His name was Walter, but no one called him that anymore. Around here, he was just the Marine on the porch. His wife was inside. You could hear the clink of dishes being rinsed, the rhythm of someone who'd done this her whole life. The couple had lived in that house for over 40 years. Raised 2 boys, buried 1. But today wasn't about the past. The wind chime didn't ring. And Walter's grip on the cane was just a little tighter than usual. The kettle on the stove had just started to whisper. Helen turned down the flame, reaching for 2 chipped mugs she used every morning, one with faded lilacs, the other plain navy blue. Walter's cup. Always on the right side of the table. She didn't hear the van pull up. No siren, no warning. Just the sudden crunch of heavy boots on gravel, the fast rustle of nylon and metal. Then came the sound that didn't belong in a home, a battering ram against a front door. The frame didn't give right away. It moaned once, then cracked, then gave in with a dull, final thud. Helen gasped. She dropped a spoon. It hit the floor, echoed too loud in the silence that followed. Through the splintered doorway, 4 men in black moved in. Faces hidden behind dark visors. Rifles aimed low, but firm. Clear right. Living room, 2 bodies. Walter didn't stand. Not yet. He just looked at them, calm but still. Helen raised both hands instinctively. She wasn't yelling. She didn't even speak. Just lifted her hands slowly, like someone trying to reach for a falling dish. "Ma'am, down. Down now." She hesitated, not in defiance, just confusion. 1 foot moved back, but her balance shifted wrong. The taser fired. She didn't scream, just fell hard onto the kitchen tiles. Walter rose. Not quickly. Not with panic. Just with gravity. His cane clicked once on the wood floor. Then again. None of them looked at him yet. His eyes weren't on the weapons. They were on Helen. Her shoulder moved. A small wince. She was alive. That was enough for now. He stepped forward once more, just 1 pace, and said nothing at all. Walter didn't speak. He didn't raise his voice, didn't demand an answer. He simply took another step forward. The room wasn't large. Just enough space between the kitchen and living room for the men to fan out. Their eyes scanned corners. 1 hand twitched near a sidearm. Another near a calm switch. None of them looked at Helen, just at him now. The cane made a steady sound on the floor. Step. Tap. Step. Tap. He walked with the kind of precision that didn't come from practice anymore, but memory. A gait that had once marched across foreign soil. That had stood through heat and gunfire. Now it carried him across his own kitchen, like a man crossing a line he didn't choose. "Sir, stay where you are." The voice came from a younger man near the hallway. Not harsh. Just trained. But Walter didn't stop. He didn't rush either. His hand reached the back of a dining chair, old, reliable. He steadied himself, then turned slightly. Not to challenge, but to be seen. Someone near the back muttered, "Is that him?" Walter met their eyes, one by one. No anger. No fear. Just a stillness that unsettled them more than shouting ever could. He gestured down toward Helen. She was trying to push herself up on one elbow now, breathing hard. Walter said nothing. But in that quiet moment, you could almost hear something settle in the air like dust or memory. And no one moved. One of the officers near the door shifted his weight. His boot creaked against the tile. That sound, small as it was, seemed loud in the hush that had fallen over the room. Helen was still on the floor, leaning her weight on one elbow. Her hair had fallen across her cheek, and her breath came in shallow, uneven bursts. Walter didn't crouch down. He didn't fuss. He simply stood beside her, one hand resting gently on the back of the chair, the other still gripping his cane. The lead officer, tall, early 40s maybe, took one careful step forward. "Sir, we're here on." Walter looked up. His voice, when it came, didn't rise. Didn't crack. He said 5 words. "This is how wars start." No one replied. Not right away. It wasn't the words themselves. It was how they landed. Like a stone dropped into still water. The ripples reached everyone in the room. The officer blinked, jaw tightening just a little. Another lowered his weapon, not all the way, but noticeably. Walter didn't explain himself. He didn't need to. He looked back down at Helen, then turned his eyes to the open doorway. Light was coming in from outside. The morning had gotten brighter somehow, even though the air still felt heavy. No one moved for a few long seconds. Then someone behind the group muttered, almost under his breath, "Stand down." No orders were shouted. No apologies given. But the shift was felt, like when a storm decides to pass without striking. Walter hadn't made a threat. He had made a memory. And in that moment, that was enough. The sound that stayed the longest wasn't the crack of the door or the hiss of the taser. It was the dull thud of Helen's body hitting the kitchen tile. Soft, but final. The kind of sound that doesn't echo, but settles. Walter hadn't moved since. Not beyond that one step. His cane remained grounded, his hands still on the chair. His gaze hadn't left her. A medic from the team finally stepped forward. Young, maybe late 20s. The kind of face that still looked out of place behind a bulletproof vest. He knelt beside her, careful but quick. "Pulse is steady," he said quietly. "She's breathing." might have hit her head on the way down. Helen stirred slightly, trying to lift her hand, but it dropped again. Her mouth moved, but no words came out yet. Walter's fingers flexed once around the cane. That was all. The team began to pull back. One by one. No one said why. No one gave a direct command. But the weight in the room had shifted. It was no longer about whatever they thought they were here to do. It was about what had just happened. A life interrupted. A kitchen that wouldn't feel the same again. Outside, wind stirred through the front yard. It pushed gently against the hanging wind chime, and this time, finally, it rang. Just once. A clear, small note. Then silence again. Walter closed his eyes for a moment. Not long. Just enough to steady himself. When he opened them, he looked down at Helen. "You're okay," he whispered, barely louder than a breath. And for the first time, her fingers curled back toward his. The young medic adjusted Helen's position, placing a folded dish towel gently beneath her head. She was conscious now, eyes blinking slowly against the ceiling light. Her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. Not yet. Walter crouched beside her. His knees protested, but he made no sound. One hand reached for hers. Not to hold it tight, just enough to let her know he was there. One of the officers turned his head toward the far wall, where a framed photo hung beside the pantry. A man in uniform. Younger, stronger, jaw set like stone. The same eyes as the man kneeling now. Next to the photo, a small shadow box. Inside, a ribbon medal, the Purple Heart. And below it, a folded piece of paper behind glass. Commendation, some might guess. But the words were too faded to read from a distance. The officer stepped closer, just enough to see. He didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Walter stayed focused on Helen. "She'll be all right," the medic offered gently. "Shock, mostly. Her vitals are holding steady." Walter gave a slight nod, more to himself than anyone else. Outside, the wind chime rang again. 2 notes this time. Hollow and clear. Someone in the group exhaled, one of those breaths you don't realize you've been holding. No one reached for the medal. No one mentioned it. Because it wasn't about that. Not now. That medal had been pinned on a chest in another lifetime, under another sky. But there were things it had never protected. Like mornings. Like kitchens. Like wives. And Walter knew that better than anyone. Helen's lips moved again, slow, like she was searching for the right word before even knowing what she meant to say. Walter leaned in, close enough that his shoulder brushed the edge of the cabinet. His knees ached, but he didn't shift. He just waited. Quietly. The way he always had with her. Her eyes blinked once, then found his. And in the smallest voice, barely more than air, she asked, "Is it over?" The question wasn't about the fall. Or the pain in her ribs. It wasn't even about the men who had come through the door. It was bigger than all that. Walter held her hand a little tighter. Just enough for her to feel it. His voice came out low, grounded, almost like a prayer more than a reply. "It is now. Helen gave the faintest nod. Outside, a car door shut softly. Then another. Footsteps on gravel. But neither of them turned to look. That world could wait a little longer. The medic had stepped back, giving them space. And the rest of the team, silent now, stood near the doorway, eyes lowered. No one touched their radios. No one asked a question. Inside the kitchen, the wind chime gave a third, gentle ring. Like punctuation. Like breath returning to a room that had forgotten how to breathe. Helen closed her eyes, not from pain, but from peace. Walter didn't move. His hand stayed in hers. They didn't need more words. Not after the 5 he'd already said. By the time the last bootstep left the porch, the kettle on the stove had long gone silent. The water inside had cooled, untouched. Helen was resting on the couch now, wrapped in a quilt Walter had unfolded without a word. Her eyes were closed, but her breathing had steadied. Walter sat beside her, not leaning back, just upright enough to listen. To the room. To her. To the quiet. No one from the SWAT team came back to speak with him. No clipboard. No formal apology. No final word. And still, Walter didn't ask for one. A few hours later, an envelope slid through the mail slot. Thin. No return address. Inside was a folded report, half-filled, barely signed. A single line near the bottom was crossed out in pen. Walter didn't read it twice. He placed it gently on the kitchen table, then covered it with a placemat. That evening, he stepped onto the porch alone. The chair beside his was empty, but still warm from where she'd sat the day before. The breeze had picked up again. The wind chime rang, 4 soft tones this time. Walter didn't smile. But something in his chest eased. Just slightly. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small slip of paper. Wrote 4 words in blocky, careful handwriting. Left it on the railing. It said, "Don't send them again." And then he went back inside. Slowly. Quietly. And closed the door behind him. Some wounds don't bleed, and some courage doesn't shout. Walter never raised his voice, never demanded justice. But through stillness, through dignity, and through 5 quiet words, he reminded everyone in that room of something we often forget: respect is not given by force, it is recognized in silence. The medals on a wall may speak of sacrifice, but it's how we treat each other in our homes, in our hardest moments, that defines who we truly are. In a world so quick to judge, maybe we all need to pause and listen for the wind chime. Have you ever seen dignity change a room without saying much at all? If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to American Quiet Courage, where quiet stories still speak loud truths. Sometimes, the smallest voices carry the deepest echoes. Will you help us keep them alive?